Hey, what's going on, everybody? BDO44 coming at you with another video. All right, so, hey, man, I'm trying to debate whether or not I even want to lend my voice to this particular thing because a lot of times, you know what I mean, it's not basketball. And I think one of the biggest complaints that a lot of fans, and even athletes as well, they have is that a lot of talking heads be involving themselves in conversation that doesn't involve the game itself. Interjecting myself in any way between two dudes when they having a conversation of any kind, especially two men I don't know, not my plan. So that's not what this is at all. I'm just looking at the situation. That's it, and I'm just observing. Draymond Green and Kendrick Perkins going back and forth on social media and on different platforms. Draymond, I watched his special last night. I thought he said some things that I could agree with, but I thought he stepped over the line as it pertains to trying to address Kendrick Perkins. It's the thing, man, and this is what I've learned in just arguing with my mom growing up as a child. Once you say certain things, people stop listening. The person you're arguing with may stop listening, and the people who are listening to you have that argument are going to stop listening. And that's what I think Draymond gonna run into when you say certain words. See, when you get into the space that those guys are trying to be professional in, I think Patrick Beverly learned this, and I think both of them are going to have to kind of adjust. When you start making it personal, or when you start talking about, as I said, things that don't have to do with on the court, and you start making it personal, it could go a lot of different ways, but most importantly, it's going to be misunderstood by the people that you're pointing it at. Now, when Draymond Green called Kendrick Perkins a coon, I think he knew what word was coming out of his mouth. I don't think he was misspeaking. I don't think he didn't think that out. But I can say that after you say that, people are gonna stop listening. after you let that word fly out, then people are gonna take a position and not really listen to anything else you say. Either they're gonna agree with you or they're gonna disagree with you. But one thing's for certain: they're gonna lose it. They're gonna lose focus. You know what I mean? They're gonna lose focus. And so what I've learned is you can convey what you want to convey. You just got to say it a different way so people will hear your entire point. You got to convey it a certain way so people won't shut their brains off and won't listen to your entire, point. I think that Draymond, slipped up, not slipped up. I think he was very conscious of what he was saying, but I just don't think it was well thought out in saying those words. You shouldn't probably have chosen those words despite thinking them through, is what I'm trying to say. He said the man was an idiot. Kendrick Perkins referring to, he said the man, played basketball but probably couldn't talk basketball. He declared his opinion, but it's just like anything else. It's gonna be people who go to say, well, Draymond, no, that's not the case. He's someone who's on the platform speaking the way that his employers want him to speak. And I think that's where it gets a little foggy for me, because like, as a person who's speaking to you guys, obviously I'm a private person. I say what I want to say. There's nobody behind me or in front of me telling me anything. But when you're in KP's position, yeah, you got a whole boss you got to answer to. So maybe the boss's position is what you're referring to when you say certain words. Maybe it's just your position, but it's kind of hard to tell when the platforms that KP is using is a platform for which he's being paid by corporate money to speak. So it's like, is your argument really with KP in that case, or would the argument actually be the person above him? See, that's the same conversation I was having in regards to Russell Westbrook and Mrs. Nina Westbrook and their family versus Skip Bayless. It's like Skip Bayless is saying all the things that he's saying from behind the Fox wall, the Fox Sports wall. Everything that comes out of his mouth and filtered out of his mouth has to be run through them first, or they're not going to air it. It has to be approved within their guidelines, or it's not going to be there. So it's like, for me, and maybe I'm just looking at this the wrong way, I wouldn't necessarily be quick to respond to KP if I'm Draymond, if the things that he said were said on the platform. You know what I mean? I would word it a certain way to make it clear that he's speaking from behind a company that may have a position against whatever I got going on or against the companies that I do business with, and that may affect what comes out of his mouth. I, on the other hand, may not, myself personally. And then Draymond, I think his situation is a bit different. He might have a different type of deal with Colin Cowherd's company, from what I loosely understand. So basically, that too is Fox. Colin Cowherd is a Fox employee. So what I'm trying to figure out as a consumer is, are they really beefing as it pertains to, is this them going at it as men, or is this, as Nick Wright put it, dog day, not, he didn't put it in these words, but dog days, June type of stuff where there's no basketball and guys are trying to figure out something to talk about. Guys are trying to figure out how to provide content, doing the YouTube thing, which is, I'm going to talk about you, you're going to talk about me, and together we're going to raise awareness about each other. Now, whatever is being said doesn't matter. You can say the worst thing about me, I can say the worst thing about you. We can agree that those things are going to be said and shake hands and profit off the numbers. That's the YouTube game. That's what everybody's doing all over YouTube. So is that what they're doing? The June, trying to raise awareness for their various platforms? Or do they really have a problem? And if that's the case, you know what I mean? Certain words were used. Certain words are going to be considered fighting words. I think that's what it really comes down to. Draymond Green threw some fighting words at KP. I listened to KP's response. His response was, essentially, I'm not that. And we all know you're not going to do nothing. That's why they understood you're not going to do nothing. I do it my way. I'm not new media. I'm old media. I'm doing it my way, basically, is what KP's saying. And my thing is, this is a tough situation, because even with myself as a person with my own voice, when I try to voice my opinions on certain things that these guys say, I always have to remember that they have bosses and people that are looking at them saying, you have to keep these numbers going. You got to keep these numbers up. And we're not interested in those numbers dipping, because if you do, your voice is going to be taken from you. Right? So when that is the case, I try to figure out, what would I do if I had that type of expectations and pressure upon my voice? What different things would I say? What nonsense would I have to strum up to keep the numbers high? Right? And so if they're not playing the same game, then they probably shouldn't be having the same fight. Right? Now, I'm assuming Draymond is playing the same game, but he wants to approach it a different way. He's trying to approach it from a perspective of, I'm going to analyze a little more. I'm going to bring on guests that are experts, and we're not going to do hot takes per se. But at the same time, you're going to find out in June that you're going to have to do certain things a little different, because there ain't a whole lot to talk about. So, it's one of those situations where it's like, all right, that's one of the reasons why I like doing it the way I do it. Because even though I'm not making $1 million doing this, ain't nobody trying to strum up pressure within myself to try to make certain types of content when it ain't none. If it ain't no content, I go into a different subject. I got multifaceted things that I like to talk about. So if for some reason basketball ain't popping, we'll go into a different conversation, have this channel be something else. And when basketball is basketball, we'll talk it. But that's not the privilege that a lot of these guys have. That's not, their bosses they don't have their structure that way in any way, shape, or form. So if it ain't sports, they had better strum up some beef, better strum up some rumors or some free agency moves or something, or otherwise they're just going to sit there with dead air. And so that's my thing. Is that something I should take seriously, or is that some like rap beef where somebody had a conversation behind the scenes and agreed not to feel no way about whatever said? And if that's the case, just like I treat YouTube situations like that, I don't really comment on them at all. And I just know the game, so it's no point. It's all controversy. I thought this was important for me personally, just looking at what was said, because I understand that Draymond Green is here's the thing with Draymond's situation, and he mentioned this in his podcast, the same podcast. Had two different conversations, but I think they connect in my mind. Draymond's situation is very sensitive because the Golden State Warriors do have to continue to play the luxury tax in order to keep their team together. And he mentioned how he wants to see the teams who scout very well have a chance to keep the players that they draft without losing them to free agency based on the fact that they can't keep him cap wise. Draymond's in a weird spot because he needs to have his career in place for what happens when these checks, the NBA checks, stop coming. What happens when the Golden State Warriors decide to move into a different direction? Is he going to be the type of guy who wants to go to different places? Or is he going to be a guy who retires on the spot? I'm not sure, but I think the importance of keeping this new media thing going helps him with that transition. And he sees it that way, and I truly believe that is why he was willing to risk it in the finals. I think he totally saw the fruit in not being dual-minded in the finals. I think he totally saw what everybody was talking about, and you probably shouldn't do this during the finals or during the playoffs. I think he saw it. But I also think he thinks that this should be prioritized almost as much as basketball, because this is what he's going to do after basketball. And it needs to be sharp and ready to go for when he steps away, he could transition to it already strong, not trying to build it, because it's smart to build it now while he's playing, because it is what the people need. We want to see players who give us a little more access. This is the social media era. We want reality basketball to a degree. He understands that, and it's because he understands that it's more likely people are going to pay attention to him now than if he were to try to start the process after he plays. I think it worked. He was able to win, but he did struggle. The wisdom people were talking about behind not doing it was evident. His team just happened to overcome that, and I think that that's an important thing for him to see. It's not that was the right decision; it's that you got away with it. You literally got away with it. But I think the point I'm trying to make is this: he has to think about what happens if the Golden State Warriors move on, because there is a slight chance they're going to have to do that very soon. He is a very important piece to what they do. And if they were to move on from him, it would be a mistake, especially while those two Splash Brothers are in place. They need him to function the way that they need to. I'm not sure about Jordan Poole and all the other new guys, because they are new pieces. But those two don't know a world without Dre, and they win with Dre. So I would keep them together at all costs, if at all possible. But the thing of the matter is, Jordan Poole, Kevon Looney, Gary Payton, Otto Porter. I mean, these names just keep piling up. Then they got the youngsters they just picked up, Moody, Wiseman, Kuminga. All of these guys got to be paid over the next 4 years. And when you start thinking about what makes sense for the Golden State Warriors' future, keeping Draymond Green at that price, it doesn't make any sense anymore. That's the problem. That's the God's honest truth. I think he knows that, and unfortunately, I know it too. The thing about it is, you're going to eat that loss, or rather, you're going to eat that amount, because they just won a championship, and you're going to go into next season fully equipped to do it again. So you're not going to trip on anything about Draymond Green. You definitely bring him back next season, and I could argue you probably have plans of bringing him back the following season. But after that, and I think the only reason why those are guaranteed is because he's godfathered into their legendary situation. I don't know that he has as much wiggle room or as much value in other situations, because he would have to prove himself in their system, whatever the system would be. And unfortunately, with some of his weaknesses, that would be a hard task to try to work him into the equation, I think, and then still see the value that he provides in Golden State. It would not be there. It would not be there. And so that's the thing. It's like for him, and I listened to Klay Thompson. Klay said he's only going to play for Steve Kerr. That part is already understood. I don't know how Steph feels. I don't really know how Dre feels. But looking at the way that he's moving, it looks like he's trying to transition out of basketball, with the idea that maybe the Golden State situation might end before he wants it. I think that. I really think that. And I've been thinking a lot about that since the finals. Now that he's won the championship, seeing how it all played out, the gamble worked in terms of doing the both things at the same time. It all worked out. Listen to some of the things he's talking about since. I think there's reason to believe he's a little concerned about what's going to go forward with him in Golden State after this season. So, he needs to keep, and if that is the case, it would make sense for him to prioritize his new media, the Draymond Green show, and get that underway so that if for any reason the Golden State Warriors say thank you, he can either go like this, retire, transition straight into the media, or, stay playing ball like he wants to and not thinking none of what I'm talking about. But the point is the options will be there. He can walk away and not have a bunch of question marks about what he's going to do with the rest of his career, or with the rest of his life, rather. So I think, looking at how Kobe transitioned out of basketball into the things that he was trying to do, winning an Oscar, I think players are looking at that blueprint and saying, okay, yeah, I don't have to be just missing in action after the game or just automatically transition into some of the traditional things that players do. I can get a head start on these things like Kobe did before my career ends, because that's what Kobe was doing. And then by the time it happens, I'm already full-fledged in the speed of what it is I'm doing next. I don't even have to be depressed over basketball or nothing, because I ain't going to miss it. I'm going to be too busy. So maybe that's part of what Dre's doing. I think he's kind of working that into his equation. Plus, when you're close to LeBron James, you're going to always have yourself involved in things that are going to help you make more success happen for yourself. I just see that across the board with all of his friends, man. So Draymond's one of them. So you knew he was going to be, that's just elevating. It was going to happen, I think. So all in all, man, that's another reason why I don't think he should be going in the back and forth with KP, going to war with these corporations. Because at the end of the day, if in fact this isn't a Fox thing, then he's probably going to end up getting doors slammed in his face, waging war against certain people. You know what I mean? In this space. That's the thing. I don't know nothing about that, to be honest with you. I'm just speculating. But it seems to me that it does become a situation where you step on a lot of toes and you start getting doors shut, blackballed, etc., that kind of stuff. So I don't know. It's good to have constructive back and forth with those type of entities. They're going to see it the YouTube way. You're raising awareness for them. So as long as you're not smearing doo-doo on them, so to speak, and it's good choppy back and forth, something that they can create segments off of, for which it seems like they are, then it's probably all good business. But if it's really dirty, if it's really bad energy, I think he's not working from a position of power to wage war against those corporations trying to do what it is he's doing. I think he should not. I don't think he should do it. It's okay to have gripes with them, but as Tupac said, you get your money right, then you be ready for war. you don't do it beforehand. So that's how I look at it. I think he has a legitimate gripe, though. I look at some of the things that he's talking about in regards to how media, old media, I guess you call them, approaches the game. And I said this many times, I'm gonna say it now. I just feel like the tide is changing. People don't want the same things anymore, or at least they don't think they do. And now it's time to start considering the new sensitivity levels that are coming into the sports atmosphere. People are different now. They don't want to hear about players they used to root for who are now struggling, be ripped apart. We don't want to hear people we grew up hearing you rip apart continue to be ripped apart into their old age. It's just old now. We don't want to see it. Honestly, it's not even that it's not entertaining. It's just that it's not entertaining anymore. I think we've seen so much of it to now it's getting to a point where we know what you're going to say next. We kind of know that you're going to take an opposite position on some great players. You're going to hug up against other great players and they can do no wrong. And you're going to, flip-flop back and forth between what makes sense to you based on what it is you see, like the rest of us in that regard. Can't argue with that. But, it's important that you, as he said, stand on your word. You know what I mean? I thought that Nick Wright really did kind of hurt himself, even though that it's all tongue-in-cheek. I think he really did hurt his credibility in a slight way. As Draymond Green mentioned, you got to stand on something. When I made my predictions about different things, I went through the process of seeing the tide change within the predictions that I made. And I would tell you guys, like, yo, my prediction is busted. Something happened and something changed, and now it's just not what it was. But I'm not going to leave my prediction, because just like the pendulum swung one way, it can spin back another way. We've seen 3-1 leads blown. Situations like that. So you gotta understand that people are going to receive it a certain way when you don't stand on your word. Not just as it pertains to the subject that you're talking about, but it does bleed into, okay, what do you stand on? Are you going to flip-flop in other areas? Are you flip-flopping in business? Are you flip-flopping in your house? Like, it's all different types of stuff that You don't know where it begins and you don't know where it ends. And that's one of the reasons why I try my very best not to change my picks. Not to say that I've never done it, because you would have to go through all of my videos and I can't recall. But it is something I don't want to do. If something's going to be wrong, then I just tell you, hey, I anticipate it being wrong. That was my pick. This is what I see. I'm about to be wrong. And it's the same thing. That's the same thing as flopping. That's the same thing as flip-flopping, in my opinion, because you're telling people that you see something different. But what you're not doing is telling them that the word that you stood on and that the conviction that you have cannot be overruled. You understand what I'm saying? If new information comes in, you can't be wrong. Yes, I can be wrong. I can totally be wrong. And it's okay for me to be wrong, because it gives value to the times when I'm right. You know what I mean? It totally gives value to the times when I'm right. It means something when I stand on my convictions and they come true, versus when I stand on my convictions and when they don't. So I just feel like as an analyst, if you're in that business, maybe take a little page out of my book on that one and just say, yo, I anticipate being wrong. I see new things. That's really the best way to do it. That way you can identify the truth within yourself to say, hey, that's not the same information, but to also stand on your word so people don't take you the wrong way. It's best of both worlds as far as I can tell. So anyway, I just wanted to say that because Draymond mentioned it and I felt like it was something I agreed with. But all in all, man, all in all, just to head back to the Draymond Green side of things, I just feel like he's going to have a tougher time, in my opinion, just jumping into any organization and providing the value that he does for the Golden State Warriors. They have a very unique system with very unique types of pieces that he knows like the back of his hand, because he developed with them and worked with them all the way through the legendary success. So if he were to try to go to the Lakers or try to go to Detroit or try to go to any of these teams that he may be interested in going to, he's going to have a hard time incorporating himself into what it is that they do, as he's starting to slow down and his game not being a traditional space to floor, easy to slip in type of situation. His game is predicated on how hard he works, how well he rebounds, how well he defends, and how well he gets under the skin of others. And while he can always get under the skin of others, and you know, he's going to be active and stuff like that, I think the speed's going to slow down. I think the body's slowing down, and ultimately the offensive issues are going to get even worse as that is the case. So yeah, that's just my observation. I don't know if I know what I'm talking about at all, but as you age, you get older, and you don't have traditional skills, it does become harder to work you into a system. So yeah, I think he's in a unique situation. I don't know that Golden State's going to stay together for much longer. As we know it, they definitely going to have some of these guys, these youngsters, going to be there. But Dre, I think it probably had to be the first one to go, to be honest with you, because I'm not getting rid of them shooters. I don't think anybody's getting rid of Steph and Clay until they're ready to go. So if we got to shave salary, you know what I'm saying? That's what it comes down to. And I think he knows that if he were in a different situation, there wouldn't be no question of who they choose between him and Kevon Looney. Wouldn't be no situation. It's no conversation. In the other 29 teams, you got to take Kevon at this stage, the younger player, the more durable body right now. You got to take him. But Golden State, they may actually have a problem with that. They may actually, in fact, I think it's likely they're going to choose Dre over Kevon. So that's the reality I see. That's what I see. It's for what it's worth, man. I think he's trying to transition, make sure that if for something like that happens, if the rug gets pulled, he don't have to have just nothing in place. You know, he could transition out and go straight into the new media and keep rolling. So that's what I think he's doing, man. Hopefully he can solve everything that he's got going on with KP. Or not, man. Sometimes situations don't have to get solved. You just stay away from me, I stay away from you, we cool. That's probably the best way to go if it's a problem. Because all that back and forth is just, it's not necessary. And I'll say something else. KP's getting in too many back and forths this week. Too many. That situation with John Morant, you don't want to be seen having that type of conversation. You're too old for that, bro. You're way more mature than him, than that. John Morant is still a youngster. He's from a different generation. They acting wild out here. They taking chances. They going to jail in a lot of these cases for that generation, man. You don't need to be talking about spinning, nothing, none of that with him. None of that. Don't. Because you are a part of Fox. You are trying to transition into the old media, and they will get you out of here for certain things. You know, they may not know what time it is as it pertains to that, but yeah, KP, it's time to fall back. You're getting too many of those this week.
So that's what I gotta say, man. Oh, and one more thing, if we're gonna talk about KP, I'm gonna put some respect on his name before we end this, because Draymond said some things I didn't agree with in regards to KP. Listen, this is the truth, and I know Draymond know this. The Lakers won the championship in 2010, in my humble opinion, because KP got hurt in Game 7 and wasn't there to overpower Pau Gasol on the boards, for which was very key in Game 7, because we got some offensive rebounds that we probably wouldn't have got if that big man wasn't on the floor. KP was a very, very key screen setter, right? And you're going to say, but we're talking about the little things that help you win. You know, we talk about Draymond Green and his game that affects the small things. Well, KP's game affects the small things. That's why it's really disappointing for Draymond in the way that he affects the game to belittle KP in the way that he affected the game. Granted, KP is not on the level of Draymond. Not saying those words. What I'm saying is they both affect the game in similar ways, to where there wasn't the vanity things that they affected, but their teams needed them. They affected winning. And if you didn't realize that about KP and the Boston Celtics, I encourage you to go back and watch how we won the series against them. I don't know that we do that because it took 6 games to get to that point, because he kept on being a problem for us rebounding the ball. He was a big defensive piece to what it is the Boston Celtics did. He helped Kevin Garnett a great deal in that front court, manage the size that they were dealing with as it came their way. Oklahoma City, I don't really know his value in certain other situations, but he did a lot of winning. He was in a lot of winning situations. If he was a hell of a scrub, he was a hell of a scrub, because it seemed like every contender wanted him on his team, right? So when we speak about KP, was he a role player? Yeah, we talk about certain players around the league who have been role players in key situations over the years. They're not stars, they're not bus drivers. But if for some reason they're not on the floor, then bus drivers was losing. And that is exactly what KP's role was to that Boston Celtics team in 2010. The most important championship of my Laker lifetime. I credit it to several things. One being Ron Artest and Pau Gasol playing fantastic, helping Kobe throughout a struggling series. And KP not being there. I never forgot that, and I'm going to make sure none of us do either. My name is BDL44. I thank y'all for watching. I'm out.